Welcome to the next episode of HuMan Up podcast. My name is Nathan Gangadine, and it's been a little while since I've offered another insight and what I like to call meditation, because as opposed to just delivering information, like telling you about what I'm talking about, the idea with these podcasts is more to be a journey. So as I'm speaking, it's inviting you along for the ride. And if you stay with me, if you follow my logic, it's not about accumulating information, but rather getting your mind in a zone of coherence. And in that space, we can uncomplicate so many of life's issues and so many of the things that makes life confusing and difficult and frustrating and even scary or anxiety causing, stress causing, all of these things. We know that stress, for example, is whatever elements are involved. Stress is most definitely the greatest or one of the greatest threats to our health. And we think of stress management really as a matter of avoiding stressful situations, right? So in other words, we automatically place ourselves in a mindset. We don't know that we're doing this. It's just so standard practice that we can't help it. So the idea is, if I'm going to not feel stressed, nobody likes stress, right? Maybe, of course, the word stress can be taken as like, the stress that's put on one's muscles when they're lifting is a good kind of stress that helps you build muscle or whatever. So just to be clear, we're not going to, start nitpicking about what that word encompasses. But obviously, I mean stress in terms of that feeling of, it can take on many different kinds of flavors, fear, anxiety, worry, frustration and anger, things like that, that if we were to maybe study the biological profile of a person in that moment, chemical profile, I don't know how it all works. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert, but I know enough to know that there are, just like there's chemicals and reactions in the body that are associated with pleasure and euphoria, like dopamine, for example. There are also obviously going to be, there's going to be a chemical profile to stress. Somebody who's in stress and somebody who's worried and somebody who's anxiety ridden and all of this. And so so obviously what we want to not even feel that stress. But what we think we need to do in order to avoid it is to, again, create a life situation where we don't have to experience stress. And of course, like, why wouldn't you? Like, if you had the choice to live right by the train station where you hear it passing by and going every few minutes, and you had the choice of that or being in a nice, quiet neighborhood where you don't have to listen to that noise or ambulances and all this kind of stuff. Let's say like a nice rural area or safe, quiet neighborhood. Most people are going to choose the thing that's less on your sense of peace, and so there are objectively things that are grating and therefore stressful. For example, traffic, just being in traffic and driving, though one may grow accustomed to it and become relatively relaxed and at ease with it, if you think about really what it means to expose yourself to such speed of forward motion and the underlying thought perhaps that like, wow, anybody at any time could swerve, or somebody could be texting and not paying attention and turn into me. People die in accidents all the time. You get in your car, it's always, on some level, it's always a possibility, but you're not going to not live your life and do what you have to do on the possible off chance that you're going to get hurt or killed, right? But it's still there. So you're exposed to the constant, even just normal everyday life stuff is like stress, or your child is not happy and they're upset, or they're being really difficult, and you just want them to know that you love them and you care about them, but they're always, being difficult and fighting back, and you gotta manage that, and you'd really rather not be the case, and yet you put up with it and you endure stress. But herein lies the real gem of what I want to share today. And it's funny, I haven't even gotten to the title, which is, I wrote it down a week or two ago on my pad, and it's the words stop, drop, and roll. And I thought, and of course we learned that. I remember learning that in like kindergarten or first grade, when the firemen came to the school and brought us the little plastic red hats. And God, I could still remember the feeling of putting that thing on. And of course, learning for the first time, what happens if you get on fire? If fire gets on your body, we learned stop, drop, and roll. I think that's right, kids. And that just gets drilled in, right? So it's in the context, of course, of like the best way. You don't want to start running around screaming if you're on fire. You stop, you drop to the ground, and you roll back and forth, and that puts out the fire. Okay. So we've established that. You probably knew that already, but just in case anybody's not hip to that little code of conduct. But I thought of it in a much different context, very akin to what I'm teaching in yoga and in life, and what I'm practicing in life. And actually, when I set out to start recording this particular podcast, as I tend to do, I don't have a fixed plan or course. It's like, instead of trying to direct it, I let it direct me. So that's what's happening right now. And this idea of stress came up, right? So we're to rewind back to the beginning of this podcast. And I know I'm kind of all over the place, but it's all going to come together, I promise. I haven't done this for a while, and I've been really into kind of pulling away from just sheer gotta be productive as another kind of stress, right? And I'm thinking to myself, listen, the whole point of these teachings, these Human Up teachings, and the shows, the interviews, the podcasts, all of it is really about, it's not just about self-improvement so that you can live a happier, more fulfilled life. Sure, that's an aspect of it for sure. But there's something gravely wrong with that incentive, which is, again, it's very myopic. It's like, just as long as I make myself happy, then that's all I want. I just want to make myself happy. But we have to look deeper into what that means. We can't just say, just because we've always thought that falling in love, finding the perfect mate was going to make me so happy, and therefore I decided that's what I want, and therefore I decided how am I going to get that, and therefore I decided I'm going to read all the books on how to attract the perfect mate, and I'm going to shape myself into this being that I think is what my partner wants, and I'm going to become that, and this whole time, and you actually may accomplish it, right? You may actually have the wherewithal, well, I don't want to say wherewithal, but the ambition, let's say, and drive to stop at nothing to shape yourself into what you need to shape yourself, whether or not it feels authentic to you, to become that which is attractive to your mate. This is just an example. And then you can win the girl or win the guy and live happily ever after is the hypothesis. So if you get what you want, then you're going to be happy. And that's very myopic. And this is good news, because I know if I'm not very clear about this, it could sound like I'm taking away or robbing you of what you may be very well invested in. You may be very invested in teachers, and life coaches, and just in terms of sheer time and resources and practice. You may be very invested in what I'm suggesting is one of the leading causes of stress, which is to operate and move in your life from the very. We have to think about any movement, okay? Any movement, any action, even and thoughts are actions as well. Speaking, but even if you don't speak out loud, you know that you can have inner dialogue or inner monologue. All of everything that you ever experience and anything that you ever do is an action. And if we look at just the sheer physics of that, every action that we might take is always going to have an incentive, a basic one. I have to go to the bathroom. And that's going to get you to stand up, walk across the room to the bathroom, open the door, close the door for privacy, sit down or stand up or whatever you do, and do your business, right? I want to again be attractive to the perfect mate. I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get a membership, and I'm going to get to the machines, and I'm going to start lifting those weights, and I'm going to start running on the treadmill or whatever it might be. There's your incentive. But and we're all operating like this, and even just ones that there's no getting around. Like, okay, I gotta pay the bills, or I'm going to be out on the street, so I got to make money. And if I'm going to make money, I got to get a job. And if I'm going to get a job, I got to, get the skills, build the resume, get the education, or apply. So I'm just giving obvious examples of what we're all doing in so many ways. I mean, in other words, every single action, big and small, has an impetus, incentive. It's got a motivation, right? So everything is motivation driven. Well, where a lot of these life coaches currently, in my experience and what I've witnessed, is something along the lines of, you too can live a happy life. You can have what you want and equals happy. And I can teach you how to get what you want. You got to stop thinking negative and start thinking positive. Because if you always think negative, you're never going to be able to take the actions that you want to take to make yourself a better person. If you want to get up to the gym, I don't care if you don't feel like it. You got to remember that you're choosing life for you and blah, blah, blah. I'm just rapping here, you know what I mean? But like, it's the mentality, it's the attitude of, I'm going to help you to get what you want so that you can be happy. Yeah. And we're like, yeah, I want that. I can teach you how to be a millionaire too. Well, with only 3 hours of work a week. Yeah, I want that. Bye. Give me that. I want the information. I'm going to go to your workshops. I'm going to learn how to be like you, because obviously you're happy. Because look at you. You go where you want. You live where you want. You can have any woman you want or guy that you want. Oh my God, I want that. Because that'll make me happy. Where I come in is to challenge that. And at first, if you're invested in that, it's going to sound like I'm taking away what you want. It's going to sound like I'm challenging you and your identity, because you become identified with what you want. Because what you want is to be happy, and you've decided that what happy means is learning the skills to get what you want. And it may not be things. You may say like, oh, money can't buy you love, right? So I'm enlightened because I've realized that it's not in the material. But man, I want love. I want to find that romance, and I want to, and then I'll be happy. You did the same exact thing. You just thought that you were making it maybe like a higher version or purpose, by not making it be about material, but making it be about love. But love in that space, in that mindset, is still material. That is, let's say, entrancing you to believing that once I attain this, then I'll be happy. So yes, I mean, if whatever your goal might be, and everybody who's watching and or listening to this, I'm challenging you for fun, because you can always go back to it. You can always say whatever, nothing, like that's your opinion, whatever, and you can write it off. It's fine. But what I'm wanting you to feel is the tremendous amount of relief that comes from giving yourself the opportunity to challenge that what you thought you wanted this whole time was not actually what you wanted. And that what you actually wanted was so much more immediate, to say the least, that it allows you to stop, drop, and roll from that place of peace. In other words, you're already happy. You're already fulfilled. But it wasn't a matter of attaining more things or qualities, attaining more attributes. I wasn't fit and now I'm fit, or whatever, I wasn't flexible and I went to yoga class and now I'm flexible. I got that attribute that makes me more attractive and makes me more feel good about myself. But if you look at what the logic is that makes that possible, you are feeling good about yourself according to what value, scale, or context that you're placing yourself in. And let me unpack that a little bit, because this is so important and so liberating. When you realize that you are measuring your worth against a learned value scale, and as varied as it may be, east, west, north, south, red, blue, white and black, man and woman, young and old, across the board. No matter what language you speak, it's the same code, if you will. And by code, I mean like no matter what computer program you're using and how wildly different each computer program is, they're all in ones and zeros. It's all using ones and zeros. It's digital code, right? Binary code. So that's what I mean. So no matter what your value scale may be on the planet, it's still ones and zeros. It's still, you're still measuring yourself and your worth based on the given scale of value in your culture. So if you're born in India, which caste system were you born into? And because of that caste system, which was decided by who? Probably the people at the top of that caste system, right? If you're an untouchable and you're not a Brahmin, you're worthless. You are not actually worthless. But because you are placed in that context of that society and that culture, and it's enforced by sheer numbers of people who play along and buy into it, or just simply subjected to it, so long you don't even know that you can challenge it. Jump over to America and a number of Western nations, I think, that are similar. But I think America is really a shining example of, think about, boys and girls. But I know that girls go through it in a way that's even harsher. And maybe I'm playing it down. Okay, now I'm obviously, I have not experienced in this lifetime being a girl growing up into a woman in this culture. Okay, so I don't want to appear that I'm talking as an expert on something that I haven't experienced firsthand. However, I have experienced a different version of it as a young boy, a young sensitive boy, growing up in a very harsh world and having to value myself in that context. But I'm using the example of what it means to be a woman, a female in this culture, and you look at the image of what an attractive woman looks like. If you type in attractive woman on Google, for example, and how so few women actually feel that they match that. And because that's a decided upon, agreed upon sort of image of attractive, then you're placed on the scale of attractive versus unattractive. And now you want, of course, what do you want? You want to climb up that scale and get attractive, because nobody wants to be unattractive. So what are you going to do? Any number of things. You might even stop eating and starve yourself to get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier to look like what you're seeing, because you've got dysmorphia, which is a condition that a lot of us have. In fact, I would go so far to say we all have it, but to varying degrees. And dysmorphia is an inability to see yourself accurately. Why? Because to see is to perceive, and to perceive is to interpret what's coming at you. And what most of us think is that what we're perceiving is just raw reality. But what if what you are perceiving is making its way through quite a bit of programming and conditioning, so that by the time you're seeing yourself, you're actually not seeing clearly, or seeing others for that matter. This is how we all objectify each other and ourselves. I could do a whole 10 episodes on that. But staying with this theme of stop, drop, and roll, which is going to be, I'm going to reinvent that call to action. Or should I say call to inaction, depending on how you look at it. And this idea of stress and the bombardment that we endure, and the way that we feel victimized to it. And in reality, we have an incredible power to overcome all stress, but it has to do with developing that power. It's just not granted. So I want you to think about all the times you've been flustered or frustrated, and usually it's because you want something and you're not getting it, or you don't want something and you're getting it, or whatever it may be. There's all these different variations of stress, and what yoga really teaches us, for example, is essentially what I'm teaching you right now is yoga. And it doesn't have to do with being on a mat, though they can translate to that scene as well when you're on a mat in a yoga class or doing your personal practice. But just in life is your mat, okay? And the mind is where we have so much profound potential agency, meaning freedom to choose. Freedom in how we can think. But if we don't have that freedom, we're going to be subject to all of the programs we just sponged in as children growing up into adults. And, the impressions of our culture, the impressions of our role models, the impressions of our parents, siblings, pop stars, movies, you name it, right? All of the examples. And when you see a movie, for example, that's glorifying that picture perfect lady or man, and you think it's the movie is about whatever the story is, but what it's doing on a deeper level is it's almost like ingraining you with this idea. If you really want to be loved, if you really want to be hot, if you really want to be this, if you really want to be that, if you want to be valuable, you got to be like this woman or this guy. And these thoughts just come in and like, wow, look at how that person gets all the attention. I want attention because attention equals love. Oh my gosh, I want that. And there's even coaches out there and guides that will say you can be the center of attention and glorify it. And what I'm saying is, why do you want to be the center of attention? And I'm not saying it like finger shaking. I'm saying it like, really, have you asked why you want to be the center of attention? Because you're assuming that because the sparkle of that grabbed your attention because it looks like love, and you immediately decided, oh, I want that because it feels like love and I want love. And it happens so fast you don't even realize that you just glom on to that goal, that ideal, that standard. And then you now suddenly feel That's where I'm supposed to be, and this is where I am. How do I get to that, right? Now, there may be versions of that. That's okay. Like, let's say you're an Olympian, right? And you want to run the mile, and I don't know what the actual record is, 4 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that, or less. I don't know. But let's just say it's 4 minutes and 30 seconds for argument's sake. And you're running a 6.5 minute mile, and you're like, I want to get to that 4.5 minute mile, and beyond. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that setting that goal. I mean, like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to go. However, a lot of those goals that we create and generate, and even that Olympian's going to have to answer this question: why am I so dead set on being the best? Is that not an important question? And there's many answers to it. But I'm willing to bet that in a lot of these goal-setting things, we see that guy who's got billions of dollars. We see that person who's living the life he's always wanted, and we go, I want to be there, and I'm here. And even though that's such standard practice, doesn't mean that that's healthy and okay. It's just, in a way, it's like, well, it's just like anything that's destroying nature. If you think about the way a tree grows, and there's a big old oak tree, right? And there's a little sapling next to it. If that sapling, baby oak, was looking at that big oak and like, and it was like, hey, how long did it take you to get that big? And the big oak was like, I don't know, like 150 years or something. I don't know. And the little guy's like, no, I don't want to take 150 years. It's a silly example, but just, can you imagine? And like that little oak needs to be happy with that, right where that little oak is, you know? And if it lives its life going, I'm not big enough, I'm not big enough, I'm not big enough, I'm not big enough. By the time it's 150 years later, it's like, I'm big enough and I'm still empty. Because I practiced my whole life not feeling like enough. Now that I've attained what I want, all I know is the stress of feeling not enough. So again, stress coming in many forms. I'm feeling where this particular episode is crystallizing is recognizing that so much of what moves us, literally moves us from A to B, what gets us out of the bed in the morning, what gets us to work, what gets us, on the day to day, but also week to week, month to month, year to year, and on the lifetime scale of what we are perceiving that we're doing all this for, is, if you peel back the layers, if you shake off the trance for just a moment, don't be afraid to put everything that you've lived your entire life for in question. And I know that that's scary, especially if you've never done it, because you're going to think, well, if I do that, I'm scared. What if I realize that my whole life is a farce? What if I realize that it was all meaningless and it has nothing to do with me? You may find that out. So in a way, warning label, hit stop now if you don't want to go there with me. But I'm inviting you, if you want to feel free, because I promise you, just like I had said, it's going to feel like I'm taking away everything you want at first. But by realizing that what you thought you want was actually stressing you out at the deepest level, and sometimes it's such a deep level of angst, anxiety, stress, and worry, and insufficiency and inadequacy that we're feeling on the deep level. That's so scary to get in touch with. We don't want to pull off all of the facades. Not the facades that we put on for others alone, but the facade we put on for ourselves. Can you imagine for a second learning that you've been fooling yourself for a good portion or most of your life? And then can you imagine not getting all down on yourself, but realizing that everyone's doing that in different ways and varying degrees? And then you ask, well, why? Why am I so driven to what I'm driven towards? And even though what I want is what I think I want, is it worth wanting? Now, this is where we open up a whole different level. This is where a lot of the life coaches stop, because wanting what ought to be wanted is a whole different level. And we become, with years of practice, we become more and more dissociated and removed and alienated from that deep inborn code, our conscience. Some people call it the conscience. I don't like to use everyday words sometimes because they've been misused and you could hear me the wrong way. But the deep soul conscience, let's say the heart, or the, and I don't like to separate the heart and the mind. You probably know that. The heart mind, it has to be one. The heart is an aspect of the mind, and the mind aspect of the heart, and it's one glorious mind. Side note, I'll do another episode on that. But there is an inborn knowing, like when something's wrong. Just take a really, really obvious example, and forgive me if it's intense, but you are walking down the street and you see an adult hitting a child. How many people are going to be walking by that and go, good? Well, maybe some, but let's say it's just an obvious act of violence. Like this kid is just being beaten right there in public. I know this is an intense example, but it's to make this point very simple and obvious. How come most of us, if not all of us, we're going to jump in and save that child? Right? I know that no matter what that kid did or does, that kid does not deserve to be violated and abused and hit, right? And if I said, well, I don't know, man, that might just be your opinion, Because how do you know that? There's no truth. That's your truth. But, and we all know there's not actually any truth. You simultaneously may not know how to come back to that, because you may be in the same space when you get down to it. You may actually think, wow, you're right. I really believe that it's all just opinions and everybody just has their perspective. So if you see somebody doing something wrong, that person could, in that framework, could potentially say, yeah, you may think I shouldn't be doing this, but hey, in my world, in my perspective, it's fine. It's nothing wrong with it. Right? How are you going to answer that? So again, so much of what I say can be broken out into its own topic, but to stay on course here with stop, drop, and roll and transcending stress. We all have something deep inside of us that knows that you know. Some people might call that the conscience. Some people might call it the heart. People call it the gut feeling or whatever, But honestly, what it really is, it's a deep inborn code that comes with all of nature. It's built in. It's a law. There's a law-like quality that we have the choice to violate. We do have the choice to violate it, and we violate it all the time. But there is a moral imperative, as philosophers of old would have referred to it as. A moral imperative. In other words, you got to rescue that kid. You got to stop that wrongdoing. That it's not okay to murder somebody. There's these things that we all kind of agree on for the most part. We agree on that is not okay. How do we know? Well, because like I keep saying, there's this deep inborn knowing. But what happens, no matter what culture you grow up in, or what language you speak, or religious or atheist or anything in between, the very nature of it is alienating us more and more from that deep knowing. We become less and less in touch with that in a lot of cases and in different ways. So what I'm saying when it comes to back to the sense of valuing yourself, feeling valuable, which is what's that? That's feeling worthy, which is feeling happy, which is feeling fulfilled, which means you can relax. And we're all wanting to relax. Let's say that the word relax is the antidote for the word stress. You don't want to restress, you want to relax, right? So that's one way of looking at it, like in terms of the visceral, physical, encounter with what I'm talking about. We know that stress is bombarding us, and literally it's, causing us to age earlier. It's making us more acidic, more prone to diseases and all that kind of, if you look at it from that scientific chain reaction, cause and effect perspective, you can see, okay, stress is not good. But then you can go about not getting stressed in a way that stresses you out. Why? And there is a simple, basic, obvious, yet hard to see science in this, which is just pure logic. If your stress is coming from believing that you need whatever this thing is to complete yourself, like I was mentioning earlier, like the perfect job or life or wife or whatever it is that you've decided, including if it's enlightenment, because you get this idea, once I'm enlightened, equal happy. And I want happy. Me want happy. If I get the attribute of enlightenment, I will be happy. And there are people who capitalize on that. There are a lot of people who capitalize on that. And that it is a deep, it infuriates me to see that happening, because people are getting duped and duping themselves. When if you just take a few moments, like I'm taking with you right now, to step back and look at it, you realize, oh my God, everyone's in the same business with different faces. What is that business? It's to get complete. And so now, if you frame it in that light, now you've got all kinds of gurus in every field possible, but the guru that's saying, reduce stress. And in order to reduce stress equals get happy and healthy, equals feel worthy, you have to do A, B, and C, and da-da-da. And they're going to give you a prescription. They're going to give you a regimen. They're going to say, eat this, don't eat that, do this breathing technique, let's do, and blah, 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 right? And what I'm suggesting is before any of that, every single one of those actions are a stress-motivated action. So the pure science is, if you take an action from stress, you are reiterating that stress. You are reinforcing that stress. So ironically, you may go to your yoga class, right? And you breathe and you stretch and you go, oh my gosh. And it took off all this layer of stress and tension in your body. And you're like, oh, and you think, I did it. And now I just got to do that every day. Oh my God, but I can't do my yoga class today. Stress, right? Because why? Because you're still, at the very heart of it, you're still dissociating yourself from wholeness, from value, from what you want. In other words, the chasm that is between the wanter and the wanted, that attribute that you want to attain, that person you want to find, whatever the thing is that you want to feel, and it's that dangling carrot principle. It's like you're running towards it. Imagine like your hand, if you hold your hand out and you start running towards your hand, right? Like try running towards your hand with your hand out in front of you. And that's stressful. And what I'm saying is that that's a certain kind of movement. Not all movement is the same. Think of the way the ocean moves. Is there muscle in that? Is there effort in that? No, of course not. There's no, the ocean isn't trying to make waves. It's also not stopping them either. And just think about the sheer awesome force of it. As Bruce Lee said, Be like water, my friend. What does that mean? What is that fluidity? Well, this is where stop, drop, and roll comes from. Because when we become practiced at going after what we want, chasing our hand, we become very good at jumping on that version of action. And I'll call it stressful action, stressful movement. And we are proceeding to, if stress is a flame or an ember that can turn into a flame, we are proceeding with every stress-motivated action. We are blowing on that stress ember, that stress flame, and fanning it, right? So something starts to feel wrong. It's like I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to make myself, right? And I still feel stressed. In fact, in ways I feel more stressed. And you become more attached to keeping that going, and you almost become enslaved to your own regimen, because then if you stop your regimen, then you're going to get stressed again, and that's stressful to think about, so I'm going to keep it going. And then suddenly the very thing that's supposed to de-stress you is actually part of your stress. This is pure logic, pure science, and you've lived it already. But from now on, you're going to be more aware of it. You're going to start to ask that question: Am I acting from stress? But then you have to go. If the answer is yes, and it usually is, why? Well, because I'm acting from a place of incompleteness. I'm acting from a place of lack. And I'm trying to fill this lack with what I decided would complete it. Fame and fortune, adoration, perfect partner, perfect body, lots of money. I live on an island somewhere, having kids, whatever your idea, that equals me complete. Before you take any actions, the most profound action you can take is stop. That's the first part, right? Stop, drop, and roll. Because the alternative, which I've been fleshing out, stressed action, is it's by its very nature is impulsive and jerky and grabs you and might even have you reacting before you had any agency to react or not, right? So if you're reactive, there's another way of thinking of stress action, reactivity. Not responsivity, which I'm going to use as a word to distinctly refer to a more calm, quick response. Quick response is very different than quick reaction. Reaction is more like an automatic knee-jerk, just you are already off and running before you even realized it. And that's the first thing we got to do is first thing in this rehab, because that's what I'm really asking of you, is to go on a rehab here, rehab from stress, because stress itself is in a way its own form of addiction. So you can get really good at stressing, and you can get really accustomed to stressing, and you feel cozy and at home with stress while it kills you and eats you from the inside out and leads to all kinds of self-medicating, whether that's substances, prescriptions, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it might be, eating, sex, whatever is your version of trying to soften the blow of stressful life. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how, because you are definitely going to have to cope. And if you don't cope, you're going to have to suppress. And suppressing is another coping strategy. Suppressing, denial, self-facading, as I was pointing out earlier. All of these things are stressing us out. And again, we can get addicted to that, and it can grab us before we can even say, wait, no. right? Just start watching your actions through the day and start studying I call it the texture of the movement. So in my yoga class, like if we're moving, if you feel that every movement has a texture, which just like something that you touch with your hands, it can be rough or it can be smooth, silky, it can be slick, it can be, texture, right? Well, movements, if you really study the sensation of the movements, every movement's all day, you'll notice that certain movements have that stress quality to it, that gritty, like you're trying to get it done. So that's the get her done feeling, I call it. It's like it's the what you're doing to get it over with. And if you're doing something to get over with, that is causing a resentment of where you are now and what you are doing right now. And so it has a feeling of being rushed, bumpy, jerky, gritty. Again, these kinds of words that indicate stress. And so it may not be an obvious stress like, oh my God, I've got a deadline to bring in this report today at 3:00 and I'm not even halfway through it. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? Like it's like an obvious, oh, I'm so stressed out. Oh my God, I've got this much time. Yeah, it's a perfect example of stress. Yes. But what about subtle stress? What about stress that you're used to? What about you get in the car and the second you put your foot on that accelerator, people are in the way. And I've felt like that a gazillion times, so I'm not at all, that's why I can talk about it. But if you study the sensation of that, like the person in there feeling what it feels like to be you in that moment, and you just really try to objectively look at it, it's like most of that time you're going to realize, God, it doesn't feel good. And that's when you start to realize, whoa, even though I've gotten accustomed to it, there's still that built-in code, that goodness code that is telling me all the time when I'm not in alignment with it. And so much about our movements and so much about what we're doing is making our body say, no, this is not in alignment with nature. And you got to start thinking of your body as not separate from nature, but as obviously an extension of nature. I mean, we wear clothes and put ourselves in buildings and have shoes and all kinds of things that make us feel, I don't know, maybe even some of the subconscious drive is humans are phobic of nature because it's so real and so raw and so sexy. And so, some people think nature's gross. If you think about nature and, birth, we and death and urination and defecation, all these things we hush, hush, hush and push away, and in nature you look and it's all happening. It's like, nature is not ashamed of itself, but humans have, we've really removed ourselves from the natural flow. So, and that's a deep, deep one that you're born into. It's the second you're born, you're thrown into a onesie, you know what I mean? And sometimes put even in a little container or crib or box. And right off the bat, we are encountering an intensely traumatizing contrast from the natural embracing womb, which even there we're not fully protected because you're so within the energetic and psychology of your mother who's holding you in her body. You're going to be feeling her feelings and thinking her thoughts, and you're going to be deeply connected to that on some level. So you're already, in a way, getting bombarded by the world. But then certainly once you come out and you're born and then you're in a car seat and in a car and zooming and all these things that are so out of that flow of nature, it's so jarring and so traumatizing that we have to cope and we do desensitize. So we have to desensitize, but imagine desensitizing happening in so many ways, big and small, for years. And so what it means to become well adjusted to this world where it is to be able to handle it and not be freaking out and getting into a car and screaming your face off while you're going only 40 miles an hour, right? You gotta desensitize. You have to. But there's something so deeply lost in getting accustomed to the insane degree to which humanity has alienated itself from nature and the natural flow. And so what's so crazy about that is your body is so much more nature than it is machine, right? And it's not machine at all, in fact. I mean, it's machine to the extent that we think in a mechanical way, and we can move in a mechanical way, and we're so bombarded with mechanics and machines and computers and devices and all this stuff all the time. To that extent, we might be thinking and even moving in a mechanical way, but the reality is that we're in nature. When I say nature, I'm meaning it on a deeper level than probably most hear it. Like, when I say nature, probably most people think outdoors, trees, rivers, birds, whatever. Like, yes, it's that, but it's so much deeper than that. It's the unfoldment of everything emerging and evolving in relationship to everything else in the great cosmic dance of everything moving and swirling and spinning and spiraling and growing and rising and falling and birthing and dying. And there's a beauty to the rhythm of it. And then here come humans, and we start to go, and we start to push it away, and we start to cover it up, and we get all weird about it, right? And then we get used to that. And then what the problem of that is, back to the point I was making some 10 minutes ago. We don't know how to listen to that natural guide, that inborn code of alignment with the flow of everything, right? And us humans now have the most difficult task ever, because we are situated between, nature is no less here than it ever was. Even if you're in the middle of a city, you've got the sky, you've got the air, you've got the breeze, you're still in nature, but then also surrounded by so much man-made creations, which are by its very nature unnatural and almost purposely in opposition to nature in certain ways. Almost like a fuck you nature. You think of the buildings like a big old fuck you nature. In a way, I think architecture is beautiful, by the way, and I think that there's really a way of it working with nature. But it's just obvious. I'm just pointing out the obvious, right? But I'm also saying that if we're talking about stress and being free from stress, we have got to see that that's going on. We have to realize first that we've desensitized to our inner guide, which is beckoning us, please stop. And here comes the drop. The drop is what happens when you stop. So I often use the analogy of the stone that's skipping on the water, and I'm sure many of you have skipped a stone on the water, and you know that the main factor of that is what? Forward trajectory, the speed, the momentum. And of course, the surface and shape of the rock is all important too. You need a flat surface of the rock. But the idea is that if it's going fast enough, that water is going to send the rock bouncing, right? Until what happens? The friction from that encounter between the rock and the air and the water is slowing down the rock, as anything does. It loses its momentum. It stops bouncing. It stops. And it drops. And it's that moment, all of that we're trying to do, all of the stressful action that we're taking, that we're used to, it requires us to not break the trance. We got to stay in that trance and go, 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 and we just keep on going in a frantic sense. The river is always going, right? There, in that sense, it's just a go. It's always flowing, but it's always here, so it's different. Our kind of going is a going to get it done, going to get it over with, going to get there, which means everything between here and there is in my way. And we all experience this. I want to just get through the grocery line and get out of here, get out of the store. I want to just buy my groceries. And now I have to stand here and wait for 4 other people to fumble through their checkbooks and make hand coupons and take up my precious time and I need to go and I need to get to my car and I need to get home so I can be stressed at home instead of right here. and if you just take a moment and look at it, it's just as simple as this. Is that what you want? And the answer may be, if we're really honest with ourselves, yes and no. No, it's not what I really want. But as my actions show me, apparently I do, because I keep stressing. I always have the option to stop and drop. But it seems that even though that's always an option, I'm always go. Get her done, get her done, get her done, get her done. And in that, I myself become a means to an end. My body is almost an unwitting participant in this frantic pace, which, if you look at it, in many cases is not actually getting us anywhere faster. It's just this really myopic perspective that thinks if I speed past all of these cars, I'm going to get there faster, right? So you're stressing because, for one, you're speeding and you can get pulled over. You're stressing because it's increasing the possibility of collision. You're stressing because people piss you off because they're in your way or whatever. And you're literally absorbing stress as you get there quicker, quote unquote. And then you find out when you hit the red light and all the cars you just passed pull up right next to you, you're like, oh, and even if they don't, and you get to the store, maybe 10 seconds later, all the cars you passed pass again. And my point is, it's only in our minds that this frantic pace is getting us to where we think we need to go faster. And what I'm inviting you to do is to be woke about that. In other words, be aware that that's there. Don't feel bad about it. Just go, oh yeah, I do that. And if you are indeed done with stress life and you don't want to keep dosing yourself with that, stop. Drop and roll from there. The roll means, as opposed to run, chase, and the jerky, gritty texture of life in the fast lane that is accelerating the even the literal oxidization of your body and the breakdown and the proneness to disease and cancer and aging and all of that stuff. If you need that to scare you into stopping, I'm happy to provide that imagery. But it's deeper than just being scared of the worst result. Because again, we don't want it to be a stress incentive. We want it to be the joy of realizing that everything you've been looking for, everything you thought you wanted. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stop wanting what you've been wanting, but you may be relating to it in a very different way. Or it may just fall away. You may realize, oh my gosh, I was going to the gym every single day and working out because I wanted to get muscles so that I could look hot, so that I could get the woman. And I just realized that whole time I was just feeling stressed and I don't feel, I'm trying to get sexy and I'm feeling less sexy than ever. Unless, of course, you've bought into the culture, as I was saying earlier, you've bought into the value scale, and you do feel sexy because why? Not because you actually do, but because you were able to make yourself appear as the thing that matches the standard, and you know that means that a lot of people are going to be like, ooh, and that's all you need. But you're still substituting what's missing inside of you now to get it from out there, and it never does the trick. It just enslaves you to it Because, and I think about this with pop stars and actors and all this a lot, when they're the biggest thing on the planet for the run that they have. And then they become last week's or last month's or last year's or last decade's news, and everybody's forgotten about them. And there's a new hot thing on the market, new hot, actor, actress, singer, pop star. Well, and that person who was feeling so important and so celebrated is now like, oh yeah, them, and how does that feel? And that person, in a way, I felt badly for them in the past, but now I feel goodly for them, because now they have a chance to get over the illusion of what was killing them and driving them and glorifying this inhumane value scale. That's really what we're talking about here. It's a silent universal conspiracy that where most of us are in and into upholding, and met by sheer volume of people who are agreeing to it, agreeing to these varying value scales. And of course, it's not like exact ones that are in some kind of book somewhere. It's just built into the airwaves. It's built into the culture, and it comes through your brother and your sister and your mom and your dad and the other kids at school and the other people at work and the TV and the music and think about all the things you're exposed to that have to do with the culture. You are interfacing with the whole planet right where you are. So even if you never leave, the tiniest little town in Arkansas, and that's your whole life there, you're still getting imbued with the whole culture. All of us are, to varying degrees. And what I'm saying is, no matter where you find yourself on the planet, if you strip down the appearance level of your culture, it's the same code. And that code is one of trying to get to fulfillment, happiness, equals relaxation, equals worthiness, value, through whatever the culture around you has decided is going to have the same essential quality of lack behind it. It's going to be a sense of incompleteness that I need to accomplish A, B, and C to attain it. And we're all going to be measuring ourselves on that scale to some degree. Now, granted, I'm letting everyone be different. I'm not trying to say that everyone is the same. I'm trying to look at the universal, however, and recognize that we are all in the same game together. So what a stop, drop, and roller is a being who's brave enough to opt out. It doesn't mean you don't go to work and make your money and do your things, but I promise you the quality of your life changes instantaneously. Everything, your health changes instantaneously. And gradually, but you can feel the effects instantaneously when you stop. And the drop portion for me is the breath. Just in terms of a very literal thing that you can do. If you just stop, deep breath. There's the drop. That exhale is like and feel the ground underneath your feet. Feel the pull of gravity. Imagine almost like energetic roots going into the earth like a tree. Going, there we go. And then tip forward into whatever you got to do next. So you still go to the bathroom. You still need to go to the bathroom. You still got to walk to the bathroom. But the way that you're rolling has depth. And even though technically walking from where you are to the bathroom is a means to an end in one sense, you are walking so that you can get to the bathroom. The walking itself becomes a part of the experience, and when you're doing the dishes, you can just hammer through them and resent the hell out of them while you do it, and bombard yourself with more stress and anxiety, which means you're creating a very unpleasant experience, and you're wearing and tearing yourself down and making yourself more prone to disease, death, and everything else lovely like that. When you stop and then drop and roll is something that we do again and again and again and again, because you'll start to develop a sensitivity for when you start to get ahead of yourself. Is a great way of looking at it. When someone says, don't get ahead of yourself. Well, we're all ahead of ourselves. That's the whole point. We're all getting ahead of ourselves. The norm is getting ahead of ourselves. So what I'm trying to do is denormalize the norm here for you, so you can see, whoa, man, all the things that I thought I wanted, all the things that I was going for, and that the culture was giving me the thumbs up on, because saying, yep, yeah, you're playing the game with us. Good, good, good. That was never me. That was never my natural self. That was never what I actually wanted. I got entranced. It's kind of like breaking a trance, guys. It's like, and you think that it's you, and so much of the things you do, and so much of the things you say, and there's so much of even the things you chase after, you realize, wow, I am literally driven by trying to complete myself from an incomplete place, which is doing nothing more than reiterating my incompleteness and making it stronger. So by the time I do attain said object of desire, it's just my incomplete self with this thing that I have to keep, which is a whole other stress. It's just so obvious. It's making me chuckle because it's joyful for me. It's like, oh my God, I'm like saying it to you, but it's deepening it for me, because I'm realizing, my God, we all do this. And so what's the alternative? Again, the first thing that you might feel is that I'm taking away what you think you want. And to that extent, you may feel like getting defensive, and you may feel like you want to unplug what I'm saying in some way. You may want to find faults in it. And if you find yourself doing that, just notice that you're doing that, because if you can really hear what I'm saying, I'm offering a perspective just by verbally expressing it that you might find, if you're brave enough to just step into it for a moment, you might find, oh my God, it's so liberating. It's so freeing. You don't have to chase. You don't have to stress. None of us want to stress, but we get addicted to it. We get used to it. And so it's actually hard to quit the thing that's killing us. But it really does come down to a kind of cultural pressure to keep up with it. And it is a bold move to stop, drop, and roll, as I'm suggesting. In other words, we need a planet full of stop, drop, and rollers, or at least a lot more of us. It doesn't mean things stop getting done. In fact, things get done in remarkable ways that we may not have seen possible, because we're so used to the stress version of getting things done. So it's an amazing, and in its pure simplicity, an amazing awareness to have. The hardest thing about it is getting over what I may do another episode on. I call it the yeah, but really principle. There's a part of us, like, you may be with me right now, right? You may be like totally like, wow, yeah, nothing's so right. I get it. Oh my gosh. And then inevitably, we all have a, yeah, but really, I have to go. Stress. The yeah, but really is the sleight of mind that we pull on ourselves, which even when we see it right and we feel it and we see it right in front of us and we experience it and we go, oh my gosh, this is so true. But really, normal everyday stress life and just being used to that and just think this is just the way life is. You know what I mean? Because it's physics. Things that we do for a long time are hard to break. But it's actually not that hard to break. It's the easiest thing in the world. Like, for example, just today, I've been practicing it just so diligently, more diligently than ever, of just noticing that impulse to get ahead of myself. And because what I'm trying to accomplish here is huge. I'm trying to convey so much of this. And what I'm doing still, even with this, as deep as this delivery is going, there's still a whole other deeper level that I would love for you to join me and us in learning, which is really getting down to the deep underlying logic. Because once you start to get down to the ones and zeros of how your mind operates and how everyone's thinking and what makes nature, but what makes humans tick, what makes us, why all of these negative things are showing up, and understanding why all of our attempts to make them better are dead in the water because of the place we're moving from. So what I'm saying to you is, again, it's not just about, oh, I want you to be happier so you can live a happier life and just have a better quality life, and and then you pay me. I want to transmit this deep awareness, because it's freedom, it's true happiness. It's not, again, it's so much more important than just being less stressed. What I'm talking about is, and I don't like to say talking about, because again, that puts it at arm's length. What I'm attempting to embody and vocalize and be is exactly the stop, drop, and roll. The rehab of, it's okay to get excited. I get really excited, as you might be able to tell. I get so excited because I think, oh my God, this is so accessible. We have in our reach, in a way, for the first time, and thanks to the countless contributions of all of these great teachers, men and women, unsung and sung through history, that have brought us to this place now, and all the technology and all that humans have accomplished despite ourselves, despite our stress, despite our perhaps phobia of nature. We have still harnessed such incredible capacities that I really feel that a lot of what's holding us back right now is just not being able to allow ourselves to think the simple kinds of things that I've been sharing with you. I've come to, over painstaking, processes and years of struggle and toil, to come to the most simple awarenesses, which now I can get to you, and you can assimilate way quicker. And that excites me. That makes me really excited, because the feeling is so much better than just, I'm not stressed. The feeling is the bliss of, it's not like when people usually think of bliss, I think they kind of associate it with sort of a euphoric, ecstatic, oh my God, I'm so blessed. That's not really where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the unbelievable peaceful feeling that comes from remembering that you are right here always, and everything you thought you wanted was just a displacement of that. And to really allow yourself to let go and trust, because what ought to be wanted will emerge from your wholeness. It will emerge from your practicing to arrive here. That's the stop. Again, the stop and the drop is the arriving again and again, because the culture is constantly saying you're not there yet. And you never arrive when you're practicing I'm not there yet. But practice arriving. Practice no matter what you've accomplished or not accomplished yet. No matter if you've always wanted that partner. I think of that one as a really big one for so many. That's why I keep going to it. Like, you want to find that one. You want to find the one, or whatever, and I know that that's not everybody. Believe me, I know that. But it's such a common example, and you may be really attached to that idea, and letting it go at first may feel like, no, but that's what I want, but I can't let go of what I want. It feels like I don't want to say like a death, but I mean, in a way, yeah, you're saying goodbye, potentially forever, to something you've been attached to, an idea that you've been attached to. And you can get attached to ideas just as you can get attached to a person. And in a way, when you get attached to a person, you're just attached to the idea of that person, in a way, if you think about it. So it is a death. It is a letting go. There's a very, very big deal to what I'm suggesting and inviting you. I'm simultaneously saying this is a big deal. It's very difficult and scary. And it's the most exciting thing ever, because it's about, for the first time ever, not feeling incomplete, and coming and flowing and moving and rolling from completeness. Stop, drop, and roll. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. But I do hope that you enjoyed going on this meditation journey with me, and that it is helping you to see the obvious, the hidden obvious, and allowing you to consider and to think and conceive the unconceivable. The heretofore unconceivable is now so utterly conceivable, and it doesn't have to be any fancy practices. It doesn't have to be any drastic changes. We got to stop making it being about manipulating the pieces on the chessboard, like your diet and your exercise and your money and this and that. So it's all this chess game and of manipulation, and you can change. Yeah, you can change all of your qualities, all of your attributes to match your idea of what it means to be happy, but then you're just faking it. So I'm inviting you from trying to synthesize the stress that comes from trying to synthesize peace via this whole unpeaceful game of trying to complete yourself in an incomplete space, versus letting that go and discovering you're already complete. You may take that as, well, then what? What's the point of life? And you may have an imagination of what I'm saying, of what it is, but I promise you, it's far better than you can imagine, because what we're used to imagining, again, is imagining from that place of incompleteness. You can't imagine completeness from an incomplete mental process. So this is yoga. This is what yoga really is. And so yoga is the deep, profoundly simple logic science way of thinking, as in way of being, that changes the way of your life experience, the way that you feel. And we all want to feel good, but the idea of what needs to happen in order to feel good, and that what good feels like is in line for a huge upgrade if you can really join me on this. And that's what Human Up is. That's exactly human upgrade. It's a human upgrade. We've barely begun to discover the magic of what it means to be, and we are here. And it's amazing, and we're missing it because we're running. And so I'm inviting you to stop, drop, and roll with me. And if you like the way I roll, and it resonates with you, and you want to learn more about the science, you want to learn more about how I came to this place, you want to learn more about how to really integrate it as a natural way of being, as your new first nature, because it really is first nature. Second nature is too removed. It's our first nature, and what we got used to was our second nature, our secondary nature. It's not our real nature, and we're just used to it. We're just accustomed to it, and so is everybody. So it's just sort of like this massive feeling to join. So if you are resonant with where I'm coming from, and you want to learn more about how to take back your power in this deepest sense, I do one-on-one journeys. I sit down with you either in person or on Zoom video, and we just go at your pace and we answer your questions and we work with your mind, and we co-create and fast forward the process that I'm talking about. If it's a rehab, we can do one-on-one sessions and I can help you rehab with such power and speed and force that you will never want to go back to that life, the stress life. And you, for more importantly, will gain the capacity to be able to see it and therefore opt out and therefore arrive more and more and more. And it doesn't matter if you're religious or spiritual or atheist. This is just about being, right? You'll notice I haven't really brought in any religious or woo-woo or anything like that, really. I'm just speaking out the obvious, and that's all we need. It does not have to be anything out there. It really doesn't. And it doesn't have to be in denial of spirit or spiritual practices. It's an upgrade to that too. So this really is for everyone, and anyone who is ready to stop suffering with this stress, this bombardment, and to learn how to really arrive. And it's the most exciting journey there is. And we also need to, there's also a responsibility to. And I know that a lot of people aren't ready for this, and a lot of people aren't ready, not because they don't on the deepest level want it, but we still have to, in a way, we have to go through enough suffering to get to that point where we're actually tired of it enough to say, I'm done. And then we get humble enough to recognize that we don't know it all. And then we can open up. But it doesn't mean we're starting from scratch. It doesn't mean that nobody knows nothing. Nobody knows anything. It just means that now we can really start the learning process. So I will be your guide in that. And so I invite you to reach out, go to humanup.tv. And right there on the homepage, at the bottom of the homepage, you can click to book. And I would love to work with you. So, yes, I will hear you, see you soon. Bye-bye now.